The bar didn't have a name. Not officially. Across the galaxy, it was known only by whispers. The last stop. It floated in a dead sector of space where no law reached, no patrol dared enter, and no sane being lingered longer than necessary. Inside, the air shimmered with toxins, harmless to some and lethal to others. The lighting flickered in colors no human eye was meant to process. Conversations weren't spoken. They were hissed, clicked, pulsed, and sometimes screamed directly into minds. And yet, every species knew the rules. No fights unless you're ready to die. No questions unless you want answers. And never, ever draw attention. The doors opened. That alone was enough to quiet a few tables. But then he walked in. A human. No armor, no visible weapons. Just a worn jacket, boots, and a calm, almost bored expression. The silence spread like a shockwave. A towering Vrexian, 8 feet tall, covered in chitin and dripping venom, slowly lowered its drink. A trio of Calf pirates stopped mid-laugh. Even the bartender, a being made of semi-liquid metal, paused mid-pour. Humans weren't supposed to come here. Not alone, not unarmed, and definitely not looking like they didn't care. The human walked to the bar. Each step echoed louder than it should have. He sat down. "Water," he said. The bartender hesitated. "Filtered," the human added. A low ripple of uneasy amusement spread through the room. Water? In a place where drinks could dissolve steel? Either this human was suicidal or something much worse. The bartender complied. The glass slid across the counter. The human took a slow sip. Then he spoke again. "I'm looking for someone." That was it. That was the mistake. Or so everyone thought. A heavy shape moved from the shadows. The ground trembled. Gorvak, the devourer. A warlord, a butcher, a legend soaked in blood. He had ended 3 civilizations and enslaved 2 more. Entire fleets had turned around at the mere rumor of his presence, and now he stood behind the human. "You're in the wrong place, soft skin," Gorvak growled, voice like grinding stone. The human didn't turn. "Yeah, I get that a lot." A few nervous chuckles, quickly silenced. Gorvak leaned closer. "I could crush you before your kind registers pain." The human finally turned his head slightly, just enough. "Maybe, but then you'd never find out why I came all this way." Silence again. This time, heavier. Gorvak narrowed his many eyes. "Speak." The human set his glass down. "I'm here about a ship." No reaction. "Human vessel, civilian, disappeared near this sector." A pause. Then, laughter. Deep, cruel, echoing. "I destroy many ships. Yours meant nothing." The human nodded slowly. "I figured you'd say that." He reached into his jacket. Half the bar tensed. Several weapons powered on silently. Gorvak smiled, rows of teeth unfolding. "Do it," the warlord said. "Give me a reason." The human pulled out. A small device. Not a weapon. It clicked softly as he placed it on the counter. Nothing happened. For a second. Then, every system in the bar flickered. Lights dimmed, shields hummed erratically, weapons glitched, and suddenly, every display in the room lit up with the same message. Signal locked. The bartender froze. Someone whispered, What is that? The human leaned back. It's a locator, he said. Gorvac frowned. For what? The human's eyes met his. For my fleet. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. You see, the human continued, voice still calm. That ship you destroyed? He tapped the device. Wasn't just civilian. A pause. It was carrying families. Another pause. And humans. We don't like that. The silence was no longer fear. It was realization. Slow, terrifying, inevitable. A distant rumble vibrated through the station, not from inside, from outside, in space. One of the Calf pirates rushed to a viewport, then stumbled back. Ships, it stammered. Thousands. Another voice trembling. They're not stopping. Gorvac's confidence cracked for the first time. You brought war here, he growled. The human stood, finished his water, and finally faced the entire room. No, he said quietly. You brought it to us. Outside, space itself seemed to burn as a massive human fleet emerged from hyperspace. Warships layered with weapons, shields glowing like suns, engines roaring with unstoppable force. The bar, the last stop, was no longer beyond the reach of law or consequence. The human walked toward the exit, then paused. Without turning, he added, "Pay your tabs." And as the doors opened once more, no one tried to stop him. No one even moved. Because for the first time in that cursed place,
the doors of the last stop slid shut behind the human. Inside, no one spoke. Outside, the galaxy was ending. At first, it was just light, a distant glow beyond the viewport, soft, almost beautiful. Then it multiplied. One ship became 10, 10 became hundreds, hundreds became thousands. An entire human war fleet surrounded the station in perfect silence. No chaotic formations, no reckless movement, just precision. A Calf pirate stumbled toward the glass again. "They're locking everything," it whispered. "They've mapped the entire station." Another voice trembled. "That's not a fleet, that's an execution." Gorvac the Devourer roared, "Defensive systems, now!" The station obeyed. Hidden cannons unfolded from blackened hull plating. Shield generators screamed to life. Illicit weapons banned across 100 systems, charged with unstable energy. The kind of firepower that had turned entire armadas into dust. Outside, the human fleet didn't move. Not yet. Inside, the bartender finally spoke, its liquid metal form rippling. "You shouldn't have threatened him," it said quietly. Gorvac snarled. "He was one being." The bartender's surface flickered. "No," it replied. "He was a message." Then every screen in the bar changed again. A symbol appeared. Simple, terrifying. A blue sphere. Earth. A calm human voice filled the station. Not loud, but impossible to ignore. "Unidentified station. You are harboring an individual responsible for the destruction of a protected human vessel." A pause. "Release Gorvac the Devourer." Another pause. "Or be considered complicit." Panic spread. Real panic. Not the kind these criminals were used to. This was something else. Because everyone in that room understood one thing. Humans don't bluff. Gorvac laughed again, but this time it wasn't as strong. You think they'll destroy this entire station for one ship? No one answered, because deep down they knew the truth. A smaller alien, thin, insect-like, stepped forward nervously. We should hand him over." Gorvak turned slowly. "What did you say?" I mean, it's just—" The alien never finished. Gorvak crushed it instantly. The sound echoed through the bar. A message, clear. No one betrays Gorvak. Outside, the human fleet finally moved. Rows of ships shifted into formation. Massive cannons aligned. Energy began to gather, slow at first, then building into something monstrous. Stars seemed to dim around them. Inside, even the toughest killers began backing away. "This is wrong. They're not negotiating. They're preparing to—" The human voice returned, final, cold. "This is your last warning. Release the target or face total eradication." Gorvak stepped forward to the center of the bar. "Let them come," he growled. "I've killed their kind before." And that was his final mistake. Outside, the first human weapon fired. It wasn't a laser. It wasn't a missile. It was something worse. A beam of pure condensed energy tore through space itself, striking one of the station's outer defense platforms. The result? Nothing. No explosion, no debris, just absence. The platform ceased to exist, erased completely. Inside the bar, someone whispered, "What kind of weapon does that?" More beams followed, precise, controlled, each one removing a critical system, shields, weapons, escape routes. "They're dismantling us," the bartender said quietly, piece by piece. For the first time in his long, violent life, Gorvak hesitated. Then the doors opened again. The human walked back in. This time, no one made a sound. No one reached for a weapon. No one even breathed too loudly. He stepped forward calmly, looked around. Then his eyes locked onto Gorvak. "It didn't have to go this way," the human said. Gorvak bared his teeth. "You think this scares me?" The human tilted his head slightly. "No," he replied. "It's not supposed to." A pause. Then, "It's supposed to end you." Outside, the fleet's weapons charged again, brighter, louder, closer to firing something that would leave nothing behind. Inside, the most dangerous beings in the galaxy waited. For the first time in their lives, not for a fight, but for a decision. And every eye in that cursed bar turned to one being, Gorvak the Devourer. Because now, even he understood. This wasn't a bar. This wasn't neutral ground. This wasn't a place beyond consequences. This was a countdown.
No one moved, not a breath, not a whisper. Even the flickering lights of the last stop seemed to hesitate, as if the station itself understood what was coming. The human stood in the center of the bar, calm, unshaken, unarmed, and somehow the most dangerous being in the room. Gorvak the Devourer took a step forward. The floor groaned beneath his weight. "You came back," he growled, "brave or stupid." The human shook his head slightly. Neither. A pause. Final chance. Outside, the human fleet shifted again. This time, there was no subtlety. Massive weapons unfolded fully. City killers, star breakers, things that weren't meant to be seen this close. The glow alone lit the void like a second sunrise. Inside, the bartender's metallic form trembled. "They're no longer targeting systems," it whispered. "They're targeting structure integrity." Someone else gasped. "They're going to erase the entire station." A Kolth pirate dropped its weapon. "I'm not dying for this," it hissed. Another followed, then another. One by one, the galaxy's worst criminals began stepping back, away from Gorvak, away from the center, away from the storm. Gorvak noticed. Of course he did. "You would betray me?" he roared. No one answered, because this wasn't betrayal. This was survival. The human spoke again, quiet, certain. "You look around you." Gorvak didn't. He didn't need to. He could feel it, the shift, the fear, the truth. "You're alone," the human said. For the first time in centuries, Gorvak hesitated. Memories flashed behind his many eyes, burning fleets, falling worlds, screaming civilizations. He had always been the end, the nightmare, the unstoppable force. But now, something worse had arrived. A species that crossed the stars not for conquest, but for revenge. "You destroyed one ship. You thought it was insignificant." A step forward. "You thought no one would come." Another step. "You were wrong." Outside, the fleet reached full charge. A voice echoed through the station again, colder than before. "Target lock complete. Awaiting final authorization." Inside the bar, every being froze, because now the next words would decide everything. The human stopped just a few steps from Gorvak, close enough that the massive warlord could strike, close enough that one move could end it. "Last chance," the human said. "Come quietly." Silence, heavy, crushing. Gorvak's claws flexed, his muscles tensed, rage burned in his eyes. But beneath it, something else, something unfamiliar. Fear. "I do not kneel," Gorvak snarled. The human sighed softly. "Yeah," he said, "I figured." He reached up and tapped a small device on his ear. Authorization granted. Outside, the fleet fired, but not at the station. A single beam, different from the others, pierced through the hull with impossible precision. It didn't explode, it didn't destroy. It carved, clean, exact. The beam struck the bar, and in less than a second, Gorvak the Devourer was gone. No ashes, no remains, no sound, just empty space where he once stood. The beam vanished, the lights stabilized, the station remained intact. Inside, no one moved, no one spoke, no one even dared process what they had just witnessed. The human lowered his hand, looked at the empty space, then turned toward the exit. "That was the deal," he said simply. "Target only." He walked past frozen killers, warlords, smugglers, monsters. None of them dared meet his eyes. At the door, he paused one last time. "Next time," he said without turning, "don't touch human ships." The doors opened. He stepped out, and the fleet, the unstoppable, overwhelming force that had brought terror to the edge of the galaxy, powered down. One by one, the ships vanished into hyperspace, gone as quickly as they had arrived, leaving behind only silence. Inside the last stop, the most dangerous beings in existence finally understood something they had never truly believed before. Humanity didn't rule the galaxy. They didn't need to, because if you crossed them, they would come.
For a long time, no one spoke. The space where Gorvak the Devourer had stood remained empty, not blood-stained, not damaged, not even marked, just gone, as if he had never existed. Inside the last stop, the silence felt heavier than any battle, because this time, no one had fought, no one had resisted, and yet, the most feared being in the sector had been erased like a mistake. A chair scraped softly. It sounded deafening.
The bartender was the first to move. Its liquid metal body slowly reformed behind the counter. "He honored the agreement," it said quietly. That sentence echoed through the room, because it meant something far more terrifying than destruction. Control. A Calth pirate finally spoke, voice shaking. "They could have wiped us all out." Another replied, "They were going to." A third whispered, "No, they didn't come to destroy us." A pause. "They came for him." Understanding spread. Slow, cold, unavoidable. This wasn't war. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't the random brutality everyone in that bar was used to. This was precision justice. Near the back, a massive armored figure, silent until now, leaned forward. "Then we have a problem," it said. All eyes turned. Humans now know this place exists. That truth hit harder than any weapon. Because the last stop had survived for one reason. It was forgotten, ignored, outside the reach of consequences. Not anymore. "They won't come back," someone said quickly. "They got what they wanted." The bartender shifted. "You're thinking like criminals," it replied. "They don't." Another uneasy silence. Then a new voice, calm, measured, dangerous in a completely different way. "Actually, I am coming back." Every head snapped toward the entrance. The doors were still closed. No alarms, no warnings. But suddenly, a figure stood there. Another human. This one was different. Clean uniform, sharp posture, eyes that didn't just observe, they evaluated, calculated. No one had seen him enter. Panic sparked instantly. "How?" someone stammered. "Teleportation?" another whispered. "No, worse," the bartender murmured. The human stepped forward slowly. Unlike the first one, this one didn't feel like a soldier. He felt like something else, an authority. "I'll keep this simple," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried absolute weight. "This station is now under observation." A ripple of shock spread. "No," a pirate snapped. "This place answers to no one." He stopped mid-sentence because the human looked at him. Just looked. And somehow that was enough. "You misunderstand," he continued. "We're not taking control." A pause. "We're setting boundaries." The bartender tilted slightly. "Explain." The human clasped his hands behind his back. "This place can continue to exist." A wave of relief, small, fragile, spread. "But," he added, "any action taken here that targets human lives," his eyes swept the room, "will be answered." No threats, no raised voice, just certainty. "And next time," he continued calmly, "we won't limit the response to a single individual." That fragile relief shattered instantly. A smuggler near the wall whispered, "He means it." Of course he did. Everyone knew that now. The human turned toward the exit, then paused. "One more thing." No one moved. No one dared interrupt. "You might want to reconsider what kind of place this is." A slight glance around the bar, at the criminals, the warlords, the monsters. "Because from this point on," a faint, almost invisible smile appeared, "you're not beyond consequences anymore." And with that, he was gone. No door opening, no sound, no trace. Just gone. Inside the last stop, The most dangerous beings in the galaxy sat in stunned silence, because something fundamental had changed, something irreversible. This place had always been lawless, untouchable, feared. But now it had something new, a line it could not cross. And far beyond the station, hidden in the darkness between stars, human eyes were watching, waiting, because the galaxy had just learned a lesson.
Time passed. Not much, but enough. Inside the last stop, something unnatural began to happen. Order. At first, it was small things. Weapons stayed holstered a little longer. Arguments ended before they turned violent. Deals became cleaner. No one said why. No one admitted it. But everyone knew. Humans were watching. The fear didn't fade. It evolved. A Vrexian war trader slammed a datapad onto a table. "No raids near human routes," it hissed. "Not worth it." A smuggler growled. "You've gone soft." The Vrexian leaned closer. "No," it replied quietly. "I've gone smart." Across the bar, similar conversations unfolded. Routes changed. Targets shifted. Entire operations redirected. Not out of morality, but survival. Because the message had been clear. Touch humanity, and you disappear. But not everyone agreed. Deep in the darkest corner of the station, a group gathered. Silent, hidden, dangerous. They weren't small-time criminals. They were the kind of beings who had built empires in the shadows, destroyed fleets, toppled governments, and they were angry. "This cannot stand," one of them growled, a massive armored warlord from a distant sector. "We are bending to a single species." Another voice, cold and precise. "Not a species." A pause. "A system." They all understood what that meant. Humans weren't just strong. They were organized, coordinated, relentless. "That's exactly why we stop them now, before this spreads." A projection lit up in the center of their table. Human space. Highlighted routes, military zones, civilian corridors. And then a target. A convoy. Small, lightly defended. Human. "Hit them," the warlord said. "Hard, public, unavoidable." A slow, dangerous smile. "Show the galaxy they can bleed." Silence followed. Then, one by one, they agreed. Back in the main bar, the bartender froze mid-motion. Something's wrong. A few nearby patrons turned. What? The bartender's surface rippled faster than before. "I'm detecting encrypted signals." A pause. "Leaving the station." The room shifted instantly, because everyone understood what that meant. Someone had just crossed the line. Far away, in the dark between stars, a small human convoy moved quietly through space. Cargo ships, families, workers, nothing military, nothing threatening, just people. And then they were surrounded. Ships dropped out of hyperspace, fast, aggressive, deadly. No warning, no negotiation. The attack began instantly. Explosions lit the void. Shields collapsed. One of the human ships broke apart in seconds. Inside the convoy, panic, fear, screams. A desperate transmission burst out. "This is a civilian fleet. We are under attack. Requesting..." Static.
Back at the last stop, every system suddenly came alive. Screens flashed, signals spiked, energy readings surged beyond anything they had seen. The bartender whispered, "They know." Silence fell again, but this time it wasn't fear of what might happen. It was fear of what was already on its way. Far beyond the battlefield, far beyond even the station, something moved. Not a fleet, not yet. A signal. Cold, precise, unmistakable. Authorization request detected. And then, without hesitation, approved. Back at the ambush site, the attackers celebrated too early. "See?" one of them laughed. "They're nothing." Space bent. Not like hyperspace, not like warp. Something heavier, deeper. Reality itself seemed to pull apart. And then they arrived. Not thousands this time, just 3 ships. But the moment they appeared, everything changed. The attackers' systems failed instantly. Weapons shut down. Engines died. Shields collapsed. One of the humans screamed, "What are those?" No answer came, because no one knew. The 3 human ships didn't look like warships. They looked like judgment. Smooth, silent, absolute. A single transmission was sent, not to the attackers, to everyone, including the last stop. The same calm voice, but now there was something else in it, something colder than before. You were warned. A pause. You chose otherwise. Another pause. Now you will be made an example. Back in the bar, no one moved, no one spoke, because they all understood this wasn't retaliation. This was escalation. And this time, humanity wasn't just sending a message.
No countdown, no warnings, no mercy. At the ambush site, the 3 human ships didn't move. They didn't need to. The attackers tried everything: manual overrides, emergency power, old forbidden tech. Nothing worked. Their ships were frozen. Not damaged, not destroyed, just completely under control. "What is this?" one of the raiders screamed. Then one of the human ships pulsed. Not a weapon fire, not an explosion, a wave. Invisible but undeniable. It passed through the battlefield like a whisper, and suddenly one attacker ship simply folded. Not exploded, not shattered. Folded in on itself, compressed into nothing. Gone. Silence. Another pulse. A second ship disappeared. Then a third. Then 5 more. Each one erased with terrifying precision. No debris, no survivors, no resistance. Inside the remaining ships, panic broke completely. "Run!" They tried. They really did. But space itself refused to let them go. Back at the last stop, every being was watching now. No one dared look away, because what they were seeing wasn't war. It was power beyond understanding. The bartender whispered, "This isn't a fleet." A pause. "It's enforcement." On screen, one of the attackers managed to send a desperate transmission. "We surrender!" For a moment, everything paused. Even the pulses stopped. Hope flickered. Small, fragile, desperate. Then the human voice returned. "You surrendered after the attack." A pause. That is not the same as choosing not to attack. And just like that, hope died. Another pulse. More ships vanished, until only one remained. The command vessel. The one that had planned it all. Inside, the leaders of the rebellion stood frozen. This isn't possible," one whispered.
Then something new happened. The largest of the 3 human ships moved. Slowly, deliberately, it approached the final vessel, not to destroy it, to face it. A direct transmission opened. A human appeared on screen. Not a soldier, not an officer. The same man from the bar, the one who had ordered Gorvak's end. He looked at them calmly. No anger, no hatred, just certainty. "You wanted the galaxy to see this," he said. No one replied. They couldn't. "Good," he continued, "because they are." Back at the last stop, every eye was locked on the screen. Every criminal, every warlord, every monster, watching, learning. The human leaned slightly forward. "This is what happens," he said, "when you cross the line." A long pause. Then he added, "Not war." A beat. "Not revenge." Another. "Correction." The transmission ended. The human ship fired once. Not a pulse, not a wave. Something smaller, sharper, final. The command vessel vanished, just like the rest. Silence returned to space. The 3 ships remained for a moment longer, still, unmoving, unchallenged. Then they disappeared, gone without a trace. Back at the last stop, no one spoke for a very long time, because now there was no confusion, no doubt, no denial. The galaxy had tested humanity, and humanity had answered. Not with chaos, not with destruction, but with something far more terrifying. Absolute control. The bartender finally broke the silence. "It's over." A voice from the shadows replied, "No." A pause. "Now it begins." Because across the galaxy, empires were watching. Fleets were calculating. Leaders were reconsidering everything they thought they knew. And one truth was spreading faster than light itself. Humanity didn't need to rule. They didn't need to dominate. They didn't need to threaten. Because now everyone understood. If you crossed them, you wouldn't fight a war.
The galaxy didn't go to war. It paused. Trade routes slowed. Military patrols doubled. Entire fleets were recalled, not to fight, but to wait. Because no one knew what came next. Inside the last stop, the silence had changed. It was no longer fear. Not entirely. It was awareness. For the first time in its long, lawless existence, the bar had rules. Unspoken, unwritten, but absolute. No one touched human ships. No one targeted human worlds. No one even approached human territory without permission. And if someone asked why, the answer was always the same. Because we saw what happened. Near the center of the bar, a new kind of meeting had formed. Not conspirators, not rebels, survivors. A Vrexian trader, a Kauth smuggler, a former war captain, and something older, something that had watched empires rise and fall. "We adapt," the old one said quietly. The others listened, because that was the only option left. "We don't fight them," it continued. "We don't challenge them." A pause. "We understand them." Across the bar, a screen flickered to life. A broadcast. Open. Unencrypted. Human. Instant silence fell again. The same calm voice echoed through the station. But this time, it wasn't a warning. It was an announcement. To all independent systems, organizations, and entities operating beyond governed space. A pause. Humanity acknowledges your existence. Confusion rippled through the room. Acknowledges? The voice continued. "We do not seek control. We do not seek territory.
We do not seek conflict. A few beings exchanged uncertain glances. Then, but we will enforce one principle. The air itself seemed to tighten. No harm will come to human civilians, vessels, or colonies. Simple, clear, absolute. In return, the voice added, we will not interfere with your internal affairs. Now that changed things. Back at the table of survivors, the old one leaned forward. They're drawing a boundary, it said, not expanding. The Vrexian narrowed its eyes. Then we stay on our side. Exactly. The broadcast continued. Those who respect this boundary, a pause, will never see us. A longer pause. Those who do not, no one in the bar breathed, already understand the outcome. The transmission ended. Silence. Then, slowly, very slowly, conversations began again. Different conversations. Reroute all operations away from human lanes. Cancel that contract immediately. Warn the outer sectors, spread the message. No arguments, no resistance. Because this wasn't fear anymore. This was acceptance. Near the counter, the bartender spoke softly. They've done what no empire could. Someone nearby asked, what? The bartender's surface shimmered slightly. They didn't conquer the galaxy. A pause. They made it choose. And the galaxy had chosen. Not submission, not alliance, coexistence. Outside, in the endless dark between stars, human ships moved quietly. Not hunting, not patrolling aggressively. Just present, watching, waiting. Not as rulers, but as something far more powerful. A line that could not be crossed. Back inside the last stop, the most dangerous bar in the galaxy was still alive. Still dangerous. Still filled with beings capable of unimaginable destruction. But now, there was one thing it had never had before. Limits.
Years passed, not in chaos, not in war. In silence. The kind of silence that follows something the galaxy could never forget. Trade flourished again. Empires expanded carefully. Outlaws returned to their work. And yet, nothing was the same. Because one truth had spread to every corner of existence. There was a line, and humanity owned it. Inside the last stop, the bar still stood, still hidden, still dangerous, but different. Weapons were still carried, deals were still made, enemies still sat across from each other. But there was one thing you would never hear anymore. A plan involving humans. Near the counter, a young smuggler leaned in, whispering to an older one. "Is it true," the younger one asked, "that a single human walked in here and ended Gorvac?" The older one didn't answer immediately. It took a slow drink, then finally said, "You don't understand the story." The smuggler frowned. "What do you mean? Everyone knows what happened." The older one shook its head. "No," it said quietly, "everyone knows what they saw." A pause, but not what it meant. The smuggler leaned closer. "Then tell me." The older one's eyes drifted toward the door. "That human didn't come here to fight." Another pause. "He came here to give the galaxy a choice." Across the bar, the bartender listened in silence, because that part was true. He could have destroyed this place. He could have wiped us all out. A slow exhale, but he didn't. "Why?" the smuggler asked.
The older one gave a faint, almost amused look, because he didn't need to. Silence. Then the doors opened. Everything stopped. Again. Not of fear, not completely, but out of instinct. A human walked in. Not the same one. Different face, different posture, but the same presence. Calm, certain, unbothered. He walked to the bar, sat down. "Water," he said. The bartender didn't hesitate this time. The glass slid across instantly. The human took a sip, then glanced around the room. No one reached for a weapon. No one challenged him. No one even pretended not to notice, because everyone understood something now that they hadn't before. This wasn't bravery. This wasn't arrogance. This was confidence backed by absolute certainty. The human set the glass down, quietly, then said something no one expected. "Relax." A few uneasy glances were exchanged. "I'm not here for anyone," he added. That somehow made it even more unsettling, because now they knew he didn't need a reason. The human leaned back slightly. "You've all been behaving," he said casually. No one responded, but the truth was obvious. He nodded once. "Good." A pause, then, "Keep it that way." Simple, final. He stood up, finished his water, and placed a small credit chip on the counter. "For the drink," he said. The bartender looked at it, then at him. "You don't need to pay," it replied. The human gave a faint smile. "Yeah," he said, "I know." And that was the moment the entire bar understood everything. Power wasn't in destruction. Power wasn't in fear. Power was in choice. The human walked toward the door, paused, then without turning, said one last thing. "We don't want to be your enemy." A beat. "But we will be if we have to be." The doors opened. He stepped out, and just like that, he was gone. No fleet, no weapons, no threats, just a reminder. Inside the last stop, no one spoke for a long time, because now the legend was complete. Not about a war, not about a battle, but about a moment. The moment a single human walked into the most dangerous place in the galaxy and didn't need to prove anything, because everyone already knew. And from that day forward, across stars, empires, and shadows, one rule echoed louder than any law.